Rebecca.
Good morning.
It's good to see you this morning.
Good to see you too.
All right, we're here to talk about the lesson that you are going to teach later today on comparing and contrasting.
That's right.
So why don't you tell me about the content that you're going to be teaching the students?
Okay, so we're focusing on comparing and contrasting, but how I'm going to do it is I'm going to use Salvador Dali and Pablo Picasso, in order to teach comparing and contrasting. So I'm using two artists to compare and contrast their different styles.
Okay, so what is it about compare and contrast that you want the students to walk away with?
I want the students to walk away with an understanding of, if they have an article and they get two different objects, so we're doing two people this time, but if they get to read about two different people or two different things, they're able to decipher what's the same and what's different between those two things.
So you want to really concentrate on same and different, or
Right.
similarities and differences.
Right, that's correct.
Okay, so then your entire lesson then is focused on teaching, noticing similarities and differences.
That's correct, yes.
All right, good. All right, so let's talk about the materials that you're going to use to teach the content. You said you're going to use artists. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I'm going to introduce it using a PowerPoint. So the first thing I'm going to do is put up a picture of Picasso's, and it's called The Guitarist. And the students are going to look at the picture and decipher, like, see how it makes them feel and talk about the picture. And then I'm going to put up another picture called The Elephants by Salvador Dali. And then they're going to do the same thing and compare and contrast those two pictures and how they're same and different.
So are we looking at will they be looking at the details of the picture to see how they're the same and different?
Yes, so they'll be looking at the color. I know, like Pablo Picasso, he uses a lot of blue because he went through something called a blue period. So his paintings are a little more somber, sad, so looking at that. And then Salvador Dali is more dreamlike, surreal, and really bright colors. So they'll be looking at the major differences between those two.
Okay.
Then after that, we're going to look at a Venn diagram, which is also on the PowerPoint. And we're going to see how that Venn diagram, how you use the Venn diagram, and just kind of introduce that to the students as well.
Okay, so will you be using any information from your paintings in the Venn diagram?
Well, I would like to try to incorporate that, so when we do like the example, we're going to talk about how we could have used those paintings in order to show that. Also, what I'm going to do is, after we've kind of introduced how to work with the Venn diagram, I'm going to put the draw a Venn diagram on the whiteboard and draw two students' names, and then compare and contrast those two students before we get into the actual content.
So you're modeling that comparing and contrasting in like a non-academic way.
Right.
Okay, good.
Something
I like
can
that.
kind of be on their level a little bit.
Okay.
And then after that, the students are going to go back to their seats, and I have an article, which is right here.
Okay.
And we're going to go through the article paragraph by paragraph, and sometimes I'll read, sometimes I'll pick students to read. And each paragraph, we're going to underline the similarities and then circle the differences that we see in each paragraph.
So you're going to do that together with them?
Yes, ma'am, together.
Okay, so then how will they show independently that they can compare and contrast?
So at the very end, the very, very last paragraph, I have the students do it by themselves. And then so I'll be walking around and I'll be seeing as they do, like seeing as they underline and circle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand out note cards. And each note card has a fact from the article that we just read, and it's either a comparison or a different similarity or difference. And then I want to draw sticks, and from the whiteboard or the Venn diagram that I drew on the whiteboard earlier, students are going to go up and paste their note cards in the area that they belong on the on the Venn diagram.
Okay, so we've been through the materials. I think the materials you've chosen are great, and we actually talked a little bit about the activities, and they seem to line with your lesson objective very well. So tell me, in your words, what are the key concepts that you expect the students to learn from this lesson?
So the key concepts is basically taking information, being able to look at an article or look at, after getting given information, and see how that information, pick out the comparisons and pick out the differences in that information. So if you have two objects, you want to be able to find the similarities and the differences between those two objects.
All right, similarities and differences, that's our baseline. All right, so your key concept is similarities and differences. So tell me, how are you going to explain that to the students? What do you mean? And I think from what I'm hearing you say, using that non-academic modeling is going to really be key in your lesson.
Right.
So how are you going to use that non-academic modeling to show those similarities and differences?
Okay, so from drawing the two students' names and then using them to compare and contrast, it's showing when we compare and contrast these two students who are physically in the classroom, we can do the same thing when we have two men that we're talking about in an article. So using those two students, say we picked a boy and a girl, obviously there's some similarities, they're both in 5th grade, but differences is one's a boy and one's a girl. Well, when you're reading in an article, it's just like that, except you don't physically know those people, but you get the same information. So it's going to be the same type of, we're still comparing and contrasting, but we're just picking out the information that we have on paper rather than what we have in front of us.
Okay. So what kind of knowledge do you think the students come in with? Do you think they've been introduced to comparing and contrasting?
I think they have. They're in 5th grade, so I think they have a little bit of background knowledge, especially with Venn diagrams. They've worked with it a little bit throughout the years, but I do think that it needs to be refined. I think students know how to work with an article, but I'm not sure if they know how to pick out the details specifically from that article.
Okay. So your introduction, and it is well designed to kind of bring some prior knowledge in. So what specific prior knowledge do you want them to know before you start the main teaching of your lesson? Okay,
so I want students to be able to know what is a similarity and what is a difference.
Okay.
So I think that's very important, because if they don't know that, then they don't have the correct background knowledge, which I tried to teach them what a similarity and difference is by introducing them with those two pictures in the very beginning. But that is, I think, the most important background knowledge that they need to have. Also, maybe reading, being able to handle an article. Even though we're handling it together, it would be important that they know how to, read a paragraph and maybe pick out details that they think are important from that paragraph.
Okay, so let's think about the sequence of your lesson and the students' learning. Okay? So you're going to start and you introduce similarities and differences through the painting. So they're going to learn similarities and differences through art.
Right.
That's it. Okay, so what's the next step of their learning?
So the next step is then seeing how we put those similarities and differences in a Venn diagram. So how we do it graphically.
Okay, good. All right, what's the next step of their learning?
Then I'm going to do
think about them.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
What are they learning? So
they're going to learn how to apply it to themselves based on their own similarities and differences between the student.
All right.
So how it applies to them in their real life.
Okay. Go to the next step of their learning.
And then they're going to do an article. So they're going to work with it on paper. So they're going to do similarities and differences, picking it out of a article that they have in front of them.
So what are they learning from that?
They're learning how to figure out the similarities and differences through text.
Good.
Okay.
You see where I'm trying to get you to go?
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. What's the next step?
So then the next they're doing it, I have modeled already, so then they're going to do the note cards, so that they're going to
think about what they're learning.
Right. They're more independently figuring out the similarities and differences. So they've done it textually, and then they would be doing it more graphically, I guess, the next time.
All right.
And then we're going to move into centers, and then they're doing it more independently.
So what are they learning in the centers?
Similarities and differences.
So they're applying it.
Correct.
Okay, in their centers. And then last, what are they learning?
They're going to be even more application as they get to do it themselves. So they're completely independent, doing a summary by themselves.
So at the end, they should be able to learn whether or not they understand similarities and differences based upon your summative assessment.
That's correct.
Good. All right, now how do you plan on tracking student progress and understanding throughout the lesson?
Okay, so in the very, very beginning, when I'm showing them the pictures, I always give them wait time, but you can kind of see the students that are understanding it based on their facial expressions and those that need a little bit more time. Also, when I do the personal comparison contrast, the students that are more likely to volunteer and those that are not volunteering as much. But when we actually get into reading the article together, I can kind of see whenever I pull sticks and call names, the students that are still kind of struggling and not quite understanding. However, I think the centers is where I'm going to get the best information for how the students are actually understanding comparison and contrast.
Okay, so then how will you handle that information as they're doing centers? Let's say you're walking around and you see a child that's just not picking up what they should be learning.
Right.
How will you handle that?
So I could always pull out students separately and then pinpoint exactly where that confusion is coming from. Is it coming from just the content? Maybe the whole art, Salvador Dali and Picasso is a little over their head.
Yeah, it could be.
So, I mean, I could always pull them separately and give them a different type of information. And I have an alligator and crocodile article that it could also work, and have them look through that article instead and see if they can maybe pull the similarities and differences from that better than from the art.
Good. All right, so now we're going to summarize here. So what do you want the students to learn?
Similarities and differences in comparison and contrast.
Through what type of medium?
Through collaborative work and modeling and graphically, so using a Venn diagram.
Okay, so multiple, so either visually or in a text, or even if someone has told them something, like you're going to be modeling it. Good. All right, so we've talked a little bit about the activities. So give me a quick rundown of the activities that you're going to use for this particular lesson.
So do you mean in the centers or just overall?
Overall.
Okay, so the activities would be a whole group activity in the very beginning.
Good.
We do the pictures and we're comparing and contrasting those. And then it would be more whole group with showing them how to use a Venn diagram and then using each other, the kids, to do it. And then we would be doing more whole group, but I'm slowly letting them start to do it by themselves. So
you're incorporating some independence.
Right.
Okay.
So when they're doing the article and we kind of come back together, but I let them read it and figure it out on their own. And then finally, whenever we do the centers, it's more independent, but I'm still there with them a little bit.
Okay.
So they're doing the centers on their own, yet they still have me for support. And then finally, I've completely given them hold of the whole task as they do their summary at the very end.
Good. Well, I look forward to coming in and observing today.
I'd like to see it. All right.
All right.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.